joined by, again, Dr. Eric. Dr. Eric, thank you for taking the time. Again, we no stranger to the podcast or coming on, but if it's your first episode, Dr. Eric, I'll actually kick it to you to just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about Primex, about your website, and I'll get out the live stream on Facebook while we're doing that.
Yeah, hey Mike, thanks for having me on again. It's always an honor and a pleasure. It's always been fun. So yeah, happy to help your leaders, your listeners, your viewers in any way, shape, or form as possible. I offer a lot of free content. Happy to do any consultations and offer some advice. So drericprimex.com is my site. I've got a lot of on Instagram, YouTube, a lot of free videos and educational things. So for me, it's all about hormonal fitness and muscle medicine. So unpacking that as quickly as possible is this. I do a lot with basically health and performance optimization medicine. I focus on the muscle. It's the most important endocrine organ in the body, building up the muscle, and the fat, brain, everything else, the aging will take care of itself. So I treat the body at the cellular level, and we'll probably dig into that a little bit. So whether it's nutritional strategies, supplementation, fitness strategies, and I do obviously a lot of hormone optimization, medical peptide therapies as well, all about optimizing the body for optimum performance. So that's me. So I think it fits perfectly with your viewers. So let's make ourselves stronger, better, faster.
Bam, you have perfect timing. I literally just finished typing everything up. So we're gonna see it pop up on the live stream now. And exactly that. That's why I'm always excited and really appreciate you taking the time to come on, because of the audience that I have and that has a lot of common denominators with what you do and the benefit I think that they will just get. And then even the questions that came in. So we had a few questions, and I'm just gonna preface this with some of the questions we did have that I originally put down were just kind of not in the scope of the topics we're covering today. And sometimes that's gonna happen. So if you guys do have questions that we don't cover it's not because we didn't want to, it just kind of didn't cover the scope of the kind of title or the episode we were talking about today. So we can either kind of piggyback back to another time or come up in another episode. But anytime you guys do have questions, especially watching on the live feed, hit those comments. I'll try and keep checking them throughout doing this so that we can address them if we can. And then we'll also kind of we have a couple of bullet points and we even talked about before going on. We're going to touch on some benefits for sleep, whether it's sleep tips or sleep hygiene, especially with supplementation and some of the things that you can do that are pretty low-hanging fruit there, as well as everybody pretty much after or older than 30. A lot of my audience is going to be older than 30, or those that are watching or seeing this are going to be older than 30 and have some kind of questions on where's my body at? What's the best things for me, best practices? And then I talked about minimum effective dose today on Facebook and on Instagram with the live stream. So we're going to talk a little bit about how does that fit into the puzzle, whether it's minimum effective dose for training, especially after the age of 30, or maybe looking at our hormones and the endocrine system, looking at peptides, looking again sleep and some of the strategies there. But yeah, that's I just wanted to bullet point that for you guys before we jump into it. With all of that being said, I figured the first thing we'll kind of jump into is looking at, especially after the age of 30, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Dr. Eric, of thinking about a couple of things that are going to become important after 30. And a lot of times we know, even after 25, maybe some of the hormonal markers that start changing or the metabolic system starts changing. So I'm curious if you could speak to for a second, first, looking at 30 and older with either the patients that you get to work with or just in general, some of the things to look for and that become important to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's a huge topic, and happy to speak to that because that fits. Most of my patients are over 30 for sure. Most of them are actually in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and up. So, I'm in the kind of my demographic, right? I'm a little older than you. So, but it certainly, unfortunately, as I'm seeing younger and younger guys and women having issues, whether it's hormonally, metabolically, tired, gaining weight, fatigued, poor libido. I mean, guys that, and then I look at their blood work and they're live like someone in their 70s. I'm like, what's going on here? Unfortunately, we're in a very toxic environment. It's an uphill battle nowadays, right? And we're trying to, your clientele are trying to fight and train and get in shape, but we're fighting an uphill battle with soil depleted of nutrients, plastics and toxins and EMF and all this stuff bombarding us. It's getting harder and worse, and I see it every day. So, unfortunately, it's kind of like let's not wait till we're 55 to look at our gut and look at our hormones and worry about our brain function and things like this. The earlier, just like anything, prevention is the key. So the earlier you start, the better. So if your listeners are say 30 or 29, or get some baseline lab work done now. Get a baseline of your fitness, of your nutrition, of your sleep, and that way, as you progress over time, you could track it, and then you know what to measure it against. If you're waiting till later, kind of guessing, then you're kind of guessing. So I wish I would have done that when 20, 30 years ago myself. So we can talk about this in a few, I guess, in a little bit. But the biggest things for me is to focus on is I always call it the double S, right? Kind of like Spider-Man, Superman, the sleep and stress. So I got my Spider-Man shirt on. So sleep and stress, I always harp on first, because if those aren't down pat, then no matter, even if I had the magic bullet, it's not going to help. You got to get those things dialed in. Same with nutrition and fitness, but sleep and stress are definitely first. I start with sleep. That's foundational. That's the base of the pyramid. So if you're training, you're out there, and you're hitting the 30s, make sure you're getting your sleep dialed in. Let's focus on, make sure you stress management. You're doing some kind of breathing exercises, meditation, doing something to mitigate that stress. If we all have stress, but some more than others. So those are two of the biggest ones. We could talk about supplementation and nutrition, fitness, and all that. But again, a lot of my patients are, starting to get some hormonal issues too. So I want to focus on, my whole focus is treating the body at this deep down at the cellular level, at the mitochondria. Those are what gives you your body the energy. So if you're working out all the time, you're training, you're not sleeping, you're wearing yourself out. You may think, oh, I can do this for a while. Maybe you can, but eventually it's going to catch up to you, and then you're going to be kind of behind the 8 ball. So, don't get behind, don't overtrain, keep yourself rested, recovered, optimize your sleep, optimize your stress, make sure your nutrition's dialed in. And then, like I said, I'd look into getting some basic, lab work done, and start looking at those things now and start tracking it. And then you could, every year, you can kind of see what's happening. That'd be a good place to start.
And to piggyback on that, because you brought up some great things. That's how to jot a bunch of this stuff down, just to keep us kind of like, oh my God, this is a good point to touch on. This is a good point to touch on. So kind of to piggyback on that, first looking at that baseline testing, and tell me if this analogy makes sense. It's something like a lot of you might have heard me say before or familiar with, is like to use a GPS system. In order for us to get to that end destination, whatever the goal is, we need a starting point, right? We need to know where we are in order to get the plan or the direction to get to where we want to be. So it sounds like in this example where it would fit is that baseline test, even if we're not necessarily concerned right this moment with hormone levels or nutrients or anything, just knowing where that's at, especially, and that's why I think I'm glad you said that, even in your 20s, to know where you're at, where you're feeling good, then you can compare it a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, and being able to do that. That's one thing I am fortunate with, being able to have prior blood work to look at prior body composition analysis, to just say, all right, that's where I was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and this is where I'm at now, and where to kind of build on that. So that's just something I kind of wanted to highlight there. The other thing that you mentioned, talking about sleep and that being kind of that foundation of everything being built off of, a lot of times I know people hear this, but I don't think they understand why it's so important. And we definitely talked about, that's where your body's going to recover and growth and all these things happen. But I kind of wanted to speak to that with you a little bit more, if you could, speaking to the value of sleep, and especially when you look at with after 30 and going beyond, whether it's from a recovery standpoint, like you said, maybe we can push through, and I'll give a personal example here. Is one night, let's say the girls don't sleep so great, so I got 5 hours of sleep when I really was planning on getting 8. I was like, you know what? I plan on going to the gym and working out today, or working out my home gym here now. I'm still going to do it anyway. And I might actually be shooting myself in the foot because I'm pushing beyond a place where I'm not going to actually get recovery. I don't have the energy that I need. So I was hoping, we're curious to see you just speak to like the sleep and the value it provides, not just like, hey, it's important, but a little bit more as to why, and why anyone should really care, especially after the age of 30.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'd be happy to talk about that. That's like a whole hour conversation, but I'll dig in a little bit. And before I forget too, what you just mentioned is key. I think as another tip for those that are getting, as we progress, as we get older, is to really learn to listen to your body. And that's hard. As when we're young, we got that macho streak going. Like you said, I can power through it. Today's my day workout. I don't care if I didn't sleep. I'm working out, damn it. And we can do that when you're a teenager in your 20s. But as you get older, learn to listen and pay attention to your body. Think, like, after you eat a meal, how did that meal make me feel? After this particular exercise, how did that make me feel? Am I sore? Am I tired? Do I feel energized, or am I worn out? And it takes time to get attuned to your body, and with sleep, that's massively important. And I mean, I've had this happen several times the last few weeks. So I had a set routine of what I was going to do. And one night I didn't sleep, and I was up and I'm like, you know what? I really want to do this workout. I'm kind of following a little progression from week to week, and it throw it off kilter if I skip it, but I'm going to do it. So I did something totally different, and I felt a hell of a lot better. I didn't push through it. So learn to listen to your body, and it takes time and practice. So, and that ties into sleep. Like you said, if you sleep poorly and you're not feeling it, and if you're tired, you're like, don't push through it. Give your body an off day, or do something light, do a recovery day, and then hit it the next day. So I think with sleep, it's obviously sleep time is when you recover. It's when everything your bodies heal. And it's the biggest time where your brain is making growth hormone. And then again, as we get older, even in your 20s and 30s, those levels start to drop. And if you're not getting appropriate sleep, you're not going to get optimal growth hormone levels. And growth hormone is massively important for recovery, for rebuilding tissues, tendons, muscles, joints, skin, helping maintain your muscle mass and keeping the fat off, keeping your insulin sensitivity high so your blood sugar doesn't spike too much. All those things, typically, 10, 11 o'clock, that's the sweet spot, right? So if you're staying up till midnight every night and getting up at 5 or 6, you're missing that prime opportunity. So other hormones get thrown out of whack. Your melatonin, the next day, if you're not sleeping well, your cortisol and your ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone in your gut, is thrown out of whack. You ever notice when you're tired, you don't sleep well, you get those cravings, you want to eat donuts and candy and eat like crab, right? Well, there's a reason for that. It's hormonal. So your insulin sensitivity is going to be off, your circadian rhythm is going to be off, and your hunger hormones are going to be off, and you're going to probably not eat so well the next day. So, and then it gets into a vicious cycle. You ate a bunch of crap, your blood sugar's going up and down, you're probably eating stuff you shouldn't be eating, and then they probably throw you off for the next night and you won't sleep well. And it's just a vicious cycle. So it has a lot of ramifications. The other important thing is sleep. You got to you get into that light sleep, and then you get REM sleep, and you get non-REM sleep. It's what they call deep sleep, stages 3 and 4. And you have to have both. And I think a lot of people, typically you get REM sleep early in the first half of the sleep cycle, and the deep sleep in the latter half in general. Now, you kind of go in and out of all the cycles through the night. But again, if you're staying up till midnight every night, you're missing out on some of that REM, and you may not compensate for. You can't. It's a kind of a myth that, I'll catch up on the weekends. Yeah, that's kind of been disproven. You really can't do it. I mean, yeah, you'll feel a bit better, but you're throwing yourself off and you're affecting your body's rhythm. So there's rhythms you have throughout the day. They even have what's called a circadian rhythm, where you have a rhythm through the week. For example, on Monday is a classic example. Typically, all of our cortisol levels are higher on Monday. That's why you read about more people having heart attacks and strokes on Monday, because our cortisol level, our stress hormones are a little bit higher. So that might not be the day to do something really highly stressful, right? So there's different rhythms, and again, it comes to listening to your body. So sleep is massively important, not just for recovery, but for hormonally, for your nutrition strategies, for not only that day, but the next day. And those REM and deep sleep, again, that's when you recover, that's when you form memories, when you consolidate all your memories. So mentally, cognitively, it's very important. Emotionally, it's important as well. So those are some foundational things. So, and again, you think about, if we talk about things like testosterone and other hormones, especially with, a lot of guys are worried about that as they get older, just like growth hormone, testosterone starts to drop, and you start messing with your sleep. Guess what? Your testosterone is going down, cortisol is going up. That's not the direction you want. It's going to affect your healing. It's going to affect recovery, mood, strength, endurance, capacity. You're like, if you're in the ring, you're going to be struggling, right? Because those hormones are going to be off. So it affects every aspect of your life. It's not just about how I feel awake. It's going to affect everything, and you can't really catch up.
And again, there's some great points. I had to write down. One thing I wanted to highlight, because I feel like a lot of the listeners will be able to relate to this, whether it's actually, and to maybe think of, back when I was in school, I guess I'm always in school, continuing education and whatnot, but when I was really full-time going to school, or like my brother in law school, or, I can think of some clients of mine that are like CEOs or entrepreneurs that are always trying to get the edge, whether it's putting more time in, waking up earlier, and you're shrinking that kind of sleep window, or staying up till 1 a.m. That was one thing I noticed, whether it's in college or whatever have you, of, really kind of pushing it late into the evenings. And even for the fighters out there, what I would typically find is I would train from 7 to 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock. I wouldn't properly cool down. I wouldn't transition from that sympathetic to parasympathetic. I wouldn't be able to get to sleep. Even when I would eat, again, it doesn't optimize how our body's going to process and digest it. And to your point, we're losing out on that ideal window of time for our growth hormone and for all the other benefits. And I thought that was a really interesting point. And that's where I wanted to kind of highlight that, to kind of make sure everyone heard it. So that even beyond, even if whether you're 20s or going beyond in your 30s and you have a business and all of that, and you find yourself like, oh, why am I so tired and dragging ass and whatnot? Or you turn to coffee first thing in the morning before you even drink water, and going back to the gut health dynamics. There's so many things to pull from there, and I wanted to make sure everybody's kind of listening to. But let's say, someone said, what, I hear you, Dr. Eric, I hear you, Mike. I'm going to sleep at 9 o'clock. I'm waking up, I'm getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep pretty much every night. I'm still kind of feeling lethargic. I might have abused my body when I was in my 20s or whatever have you, with whatever training or treatments, whatever I was doing. What do I do now? And that's why I kind of wanted to also find this as a time where we can talk about maybe about supplements that you've been working on too, and what you have, and if that's kind of an area it might fit into.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I see that a lot. Actually, people are just, man, no matter what, I'm tired. And you read a lot of people talk about their adrenal glands getting adrenal fatigue or adrenal worn out, and it's kind of questionable whether, people say it doesn't exist, but the bottom line is you can kind of overtax your system. I've had a few patients who kind of overtax their system, and they get to the point where it's a long recovery. We're talking years, not just months. So you can definitely wear out it's not really that, but that's the closest analogy is to kind of wearing things out. So, and your system kind of has to do a reset. So oftentimes there are some adrenal issues, or there's some neurochemical issues going on in the brain and your adrenal glands. All the hormones in the body can kind of get thrown out of whack. And in terms of catching that, if you're noticing that, well, I'm sleeping, but I'm still tired. Well, there's something going on there. And that's when we have to dig a little deeper. So oftentimes it's something toxin related, right? Maybe you're getting exposed to fumes or something in your workplace environment. If it's an adrenal issue, we can work on that. We can adjust your diet. We can do some supplementation, back off the workouts. There's some strategies there. It could be something on the mitochondrial level. The mitochondria, those little things inside every one of our cells that provides energy. It takes carbohydrates and fats and it turns it into energy. We need mitochondria. We can't live without it. So they can get damaged, again, from poor nutrition, inadequate supplementation, many things. So sometimes it's that. We can look at the hormones. We can look at your diet and your nutrition. So if you're feeling that way, that's the time to dig a little deeper. You want to spend a little time with talking with someone like myself and asking those questions about all those things: nutrition, supplementation, hormones, mitochondria, toxins, all these things. And we have to address one of those one at a time. And sometimes we have to hit them all. So that's one of the reasons I came out with, not to do a shameless plug, but I have a supplement called Meta 3. And it was really at the behest of a lot of my patients who are asking of something to help them, get in shape, burn off the fat, keep their muscle. So it's an AM and a PM form. The AM is more for clean energy, helping burn the fat. It provides a lot of mitochondrial support, things like L-carnitine and rhodiola, things like this that can provide energy and stamina cleanly without giving them the jitters. The PM formula was kind of an adrenal support supplement, promote sleep and restfulness, and continue that fat burning process. So it's all about treating things at the cellular level with some of these products. There's nothing really like it out there, so I kind of custom made this. It's not a stock form. I handpicked the ingredients and put them together. And surprisingly, the nighttime form was doing way better than the AM. Everybody says they sleep like a baby. They sleep like a rock. They feel recovered and feel rested in the morning. Which I knew it would, but the fact that it did as well as it did blew me away. So there's a lot of things that are, sometimes it might just be a simple tweak of providing your body with those micronutrients. Today's society, unfortunately, we are overfed but undernourished. So we're eating a lot of processed crap, but we're not getting the nutrients that we need, and we might have to do some pretty complex testing on you to look and see if you have what we call micronutrient deficiency, because they all affect things. Someone might not be able, based on your genetics and your lab work, you might not be processing B vitamins or selenium or iodine, or but you might not be getting the vitamin C. There's different things, and once you figure that out, that's the missing piece. So yeah, so if you're sleeping and you're still tired, there's something else going on deep down, and it's not just well, I'm sleeping, so I'm good. No, there's more to it than that. So we have to dig a little deeper. So those are the kind of the things we're going to look into. Look into the toxins. You guys start looking at your cells, your nutrients, your training schedule. We look at your hormones, and much more. So, but that's easy. If you catch it early, like I said earlier, if you catch it early, we can fix it quickly. If you wait until you're dragging ass and you can't get out of bed 24/7, we can still fix it, but it's going to take a hell of a lot longer. So.
For sure. And so I wanted to kind of like highlight something, because this is something that, and we've mentioned in prior kind of like conversations or in our videos of, the difference of what, like someone might say, but Dr. Eric, I go to my doctor, I get my physical done, I do some basic blood work, and they say, everything looks normal, everything looks fine. And I always like to kind of remind people, or even myself, and this is kind of like one reason I left one of my primary care physicians I was working with over a year ago, was because we disagreed fundamentally on the difference between a normal range and an optimal range. And I just wanted to kind of take a second and say, well, if your doctor says there's a normal range, everything looks good, does that mean there's still potential room for improvement? Do you, in your opinion, do you think that normal and optimal can be two different ranges potentially?
Absolutely. I talk about this with my patients every single day. I always use the simple analogy of passing a test, right? You could have an A or you can have a D minus. Either one, you're still passing, but I don't want to be a D student. I want to be an A or a B student. So yeah, traditionally, most family docs accept it. They don't have the time to spend with them like I do. So yeah, say you're, for example, testosterone, 300 to 1,000 is kind of the normal, quote unquote, normal range. And that's debatable. We could talk about that later. But someone's 301, well, you're normal. but I feel like shit. My libido's down. I'm tired. I'm gaining weight. Well, no, you're fine. Kind of like thyroid. No, it's normal. Well, you're having all the symptoms, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, I want to push someone to be optimal. I treat the patient. I treat them until they feel better. I don't worry too much about the numbers. I use it as a guide. But again, I want them to be an A or a B student. I'm not going to push them crazy off the chart. They're super high, but I want them in the upper range in general. So that's optimal. That's optimizing your body. That's making our physiology more like we were when we were 20. Again, we're not making superheroes or anything like that, but we can make it better. So there's a huge difference between optimal and normal. Back in the 1800s, there was a lot of amazingly intelligent physicians who just treated patients they saw thousands of patients and they treated their symptoms like thyroid, and a lot of massive amounts of scientific data and case reports of these patients who got better and they treated them, until later on we started worrying about the lab. It's all about the lab testing. Well, the lab tests are normal. Don't worry about the patient. A lot of doctors, unfortunately, have lost their clinical skills doing an examination of a patient, listening to their history, digging in, asking all these hard questions, because it's hard. It takes time. I was there even back in the day when I was an ER doctor. A lot of doctors were losing their skills. They were relying on technology, waiting on blood tests and CAT scans. Well, you lose your skills. And there's centuries of history behind that, and that's why it's massively important. So, so huge difference between normal and optimal. So if you're feeling bad, you're not feeling right, no matter what your lab work says, if you're not getting your questions answered, then you need to go somewhere else. And whether it's me or someone who looks at things the way I do, get a second opinion. I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on that for a second, just to remind people in case they missed it in the beginning of the video, talking about your website. If they do want to work with you or someone in your clinic or in your team, what's the best way to go about that? And obviously, if you guys are watching this in the future, I'll have that information provided below. But for everybody live or watching it on social media now, this is, I think, a good time to kind of to plug it in. Yeah,
thanks. I appreciate that. So, DrEricPrimex.com, so DrEricPrimex.com. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and of course my website. I throw out a lot of free content, so feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I wanted to highlight too with your website. It's not just the free content that you put out, which is actually amazing. And that's what I always like to look at people's free content sometimes and use this analogy. It's like, imagine if this is what you're getting for free, what you're going to get for a paid version of that, or for the paid kind of upgrade. And then you not only have your service as well, but you have some great like digital content on your website as well, whether it's from the ebook or even from, like you said, the supplement side of things and the podcast and great things. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that and mention that. And the one thing I also want to be mindful and respectful of our time is, like, we're starting to get to like a window, like 10, 15 minutes. That's even where I know the audience starts to kind of like lose interest. I feel like nowadays in the technological world, the ability to hold attention span is drastically just dropping and shrinking by the day, by the minute. So I'm going to also keep that in mind. I'm just going to double check for our comments. I saw some just likes and shares, but I don't think we have any questions coming in, but I'm just going to be mindful of that. All right, yeah, perfect. All right, so it looks like that's pretty much good. So I kind of want to start to bring it home with, to recap not only some of the things for especially looking after 30, but even before that, being mindful of blood work, take action on that. Whether, again, Dr. Eric, I like having you to come on because you're the kind of person I recommend the audience going to see, as well as just some of the strategies from our sleep to being able to understand the benefits there and listening to your body and that awareness. But I kind of want to take it to you for a quick second to leave with anything else that we might have missed in those topics that you wanted to kind of just finish on, even if it's like that sleep hygiene routine that I mentioned a little bit before. You gave some great tips, but I also want to bring it back to maybe a few things that you like to do for yourself, or like you like your patients being able to do in that evening time, like whether it's put your phone down or take the TV out of your room or anything like that that kind of jumps out at you.
Yeah, that's big. And I've been really focusing on the sleep myself because I've had some issues of off and on too. So for me, sleep hygiene is a big topic. I've been digging into it quite a bit. So, for me, I think the biggest thing is a couple hours before bed, kill the lights, get off the computer or the phone. Yeah, they all have like a dark mode or a night mode, sleep modes, and that's great. Use it, but you can get some of those blue blocker glasses. But even if you're doing that, it's still best to get away from maybe do it for a couple hours and then like right in the hour before bed, just kill it all and just read a book, start do your little wind down routine, dim the lights, make sure you're just kind of chilling and read a book, or maybe you just, taking, whatever it is that you do, you pray, you meditate, you do some deep breathing exercises. Some people like taking a hot shower, hot bath. Some people even take that, like taking a cold shower. And then as your body warms up, they relax and they get into a deep sleep. If you have availability of doing like a sauna at your gym or home, and that's a nice thing to do a couple hours before bed too. But those are the most important things. Obviously, make sure everything's dark, get some darkening shades, get one of those little sleeping masks. Some people like the white noise with the fan. Make sure the room's nice and cool. Get the temperature down to high 60s or mid 60s. I know there's a lot of little devices that'll help cool your bed and things like that too. So I think those are some of the biggest things. Sometimes several hours before bed, I'll drink some some tea, something that will relax me. A relaxation tea, or some people like the oils, things like lavender and things like that. So those are probably the biggest ones, I think. Drinking some tea that will kind of relax you. Getting into it. Biggest thing is just establishing a routine, dimming the lights, quieting down, breathing right before bed. Maybe do some deep breathing exercises like some 4, 5, 7 breathing, which I've been practicing some breath work of late, like whether it's Wim Hof or box breathing or 4, 5, 7 breaths, where you breathe in for 4, hold it for 5, and blow out for 7. That's engages the parasympathetic nervous system, like you talked about earlier. Kind of gets you to chill a little bit. So I think you did a video on that a while back too, right? So I think those are some of the biggest things. Meditation is great. I think it's undervalued, and sometimes even if you're just doing some deep breathing or closing your eyes is breathing, but some kind of meditation, something to clear your head. I think those are probably the biggest things. And then when you get
I'm sorry, for wrapping up, I don't want to interrupt. I get excited and I just like.
Yeah, no, and I was going to say, in terms, we were talking about circadian rhythms. I think the flip side is that when you get up in the morning, first thing you should do, look at the sun. Look at the sunrise. It tells your brain it's time to get up. And if you're in the dark area or getting up really early, they actually have. I've not bought one yet, but maybe in the winter I will, with some of those lights that actually emit broad wavelength spectrum light, kind of mimicking the daylight to turn on, and kind of stimulates your brain to kind of flip into day mode. So the day and the night, again, the yin and the yang, right? You got to balance that out.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of compliment, not only to the sleep hygiene dynamic, but like you said, building into that circadian rhythm, being able to have the other component on the flip side in the morning. So I think that's actually a beautiful recap, and to give you guys not only information, but actionable things. That's a big thing I'm really passionate about, that I love that you do too, Dr. Eric, is not just share information, but implementable pieces of that information that you can take away and actually do something about it. It's great to have all this knowledge. If you can't do anything with it, what's it all for, right? How do we get results? That's something I wanted to highlight, to just kind of remind everybody, don't just take this information, not do anything with it, but actually be able to take something with it. And I figured that's a great way to kind of wrap it home. And actually, I just shout out to Alan Belcher. He just said, hey, on the comment. So Alan's actually someone I think that is a perfect example of when we talk about routine, because me and him have been working on from the social media dynamic. And those of you might know him from like the UFC days in the UFC world, as well as like now in the business world and all the fun things he has there. But the routine of it, and to what you said, Dr. Eric, having that routine and having that consistency and being able to know, to where like, even when I make that analogy, and even you can speak to this from the martial arts component of like, when you know it's competition time, you kind of have a routine, you're fighting every 3 months, you're competing every other week, or whatever's happening, your body starts to kind of get like, I wouldn't even have to really purposely cut weight. My body would just know, and then weight would just start to kind of, the habits would start to come in. Whether it's, again, maybe partially the circadian rhythm, the ghrelin levels, the leptin, all the different pieces are coming together. But yeah, I figured before I go on another rant and tangent, I'll cap it at there. And I just want to say again, thanks. I always appreciate the time, Dr. Eric. And again, I highly encourage everybody to check out not only the website, but all the great things you have to take advantage of especially now they can do telehealth. So even that's the one thing I wanted to highlight. If they're not in your area, you can still take advantage of being able to work with Dr. Eric. That's one thing I wanted to really mention. And I want to just leave the stage to you for a second, Dr. Eric.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the kind words and compliments. Mike's, you do a ton of great videos and topics on Instagram and YouTube as well. So everybody who's not watching, pay attention. And yeah, thanks for the shout out. I'm happy. Yeah, like Mike said, I can do telehealth anywhere in the States. So when I offer consultations, I do online coaching. If you go to my website, if you want to do an official consultation, we could do that as well. So I'm happy to help any of your clients, listeners. I live, breathe, and eat this stuff. I love it. So let's do it.
That's all about. Thanks, Dr. Eric. So I'm going to hit the live stream.